Hi everyone, this is Nexus of Thought. Today I'm going to do another one of the ranking videos, this time focusing on the top 20 heavyweight boxers of all time. Now I'm going to start the video from about the 1920s. I don't know enough about boxing prior to the 1920s to make a good judgment here. So apologies go out to Jack Johnson, Jess Willard, John Sullivan, Bob Fitzsimmons, Tommy Burns, and all the other great fighters from this period who I'm sure would have ordinarily made a similar list. In number 20, I will go with Max Baer, who was portrayed as the villain in the movie The Cinderella Man, although unfairly to him. Max Baer was actually a very, very tough fighter, very aggressive. He was the Mike Tyson before there was Mike Tyson. He dominated fights. He literally, in one fight against Primo Carnera, the famous Italian boxer, he knocked him down about 6 or 7 times in a single fight. He was defeated by James Braddock as portrayed in the movie The Cinderella Man. But Baer was a very, very powerful fighter and someone that you really had to get to before you actually won a title in Depression era boxing. Number 19 is Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is the number 1 fighter today, and I would put him at number 19. Now some people will say, well, wouldn't you rank him higher considering how dominant he's been? He's never lost a fight. I possibly could, but the thing with Tyson Fury is he hasn't fought anyone that's that spectacular. Yes, he beat Deontay Wilder twice, and one of those fights was actually incredibly exciting to watch, the third of those fights, but the quality of opposition that he's faced has been somewhat lacking, and until he does, I would be a bit reluctant to actually rank him higher. Also, I'm not convinced that Tyson, based on his skills, would be able to beat some of the fighters who are listed in the 18 positions ahead of him on this particular list. In number 18, I'm going to go with the 1960s pugilist Floyd Patterson, a classic boxer. Had some wonderful fights against Ingemar Johansson, fought against Ali and against Sonny Liston. Classically trained, strong in most categories, and so he would be my number 18 choice. Number 17, I'll go with the younger Klitschko, and that would be Vladimir Klitschko, who won the title in several different associations, was definitely a top fighter of his time. The only knock against him, perhaps, was that he had a glass jaw. I don't think he was as aggressive as his brother Vitaly, and that's why I'm actually also going to rank him a bit lower. Number 16 is Ken Norton. Norton was a rival of both Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, a military man himself. He actually defeated Muhammad Ali, and some people said that he could have actually won all 3 of the fights that he fought against Ali, although he landed up losing 2 of them. And he gave Ali a very, very difficult fight because of the fact that, like Joe Frazier, he knew how to crowd out his opponent. Unfortunately for him, he was defeated twice quite badly by George Foreman. Number 15 on this list, I'm going to go with the all-around fighter, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of all time, and that is Ezra Charles. He comes in at my number 15 position. Did very well at both the light heavyweight and the middleweight divisions, a 1950s type fighter. And I think 15 is very much where he should be. Perhaps would have ranked higher if he had more of a career in the heavyweights. Number 14 in the list is the Fighting Marine Riddick Bowe, sorry. Only lost 1 fight, fought over 40 fights, only lost 1 fight, and that was to Evander Holyfield. Certainly one of the big 5 during the 1990s, which included Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, and actually was it big 5 or was it big 4? I think it was big 4. But he was involved in that particular period and He did beat Holyfield. That's an incredible fight. I just wish he'd been around and something had been arranged for him to fight Tyson, but that never took place. Perhaps if his career had been managed a bit better, we would have seen more of Riddick Bowe. Number 13, the greatest Eastern European fighter of all time, I'm going to go with Vitaly Klitschko. Vitaly Klitschko is now also mayor of Kiev, probably the best fighter in the post-Lennox Lewis era. tough to beat, very formidable, punched hard, um, and you really had to work overtime to beat him. So that would be Vitaly Klitschko. Number 12 is Evander Holyfield. Many people see Evander Holyfield as a souped-up light heavyweight. I think he was a tremendous all-round fighter, very much deserving of his accolade. Probably would have been higher if he hadn't have lost some fights that he should have won. But number 12, including his famous victories against Mike Tyson, give him a high position on this ranking. Number 11, I'm going to go with Joe Frazier. Arguably Muhammad Ali's greatest rival. Defeated Muhammad Ali in the first of their 3 fights. Lost a very close thriller in Manila in 1975. And one could argue that maybe he could be in the top 10, but unfortunately his 2 losses to George Foreman is one of the reasons why I'm going to rank him behind George Foreman, who comes in at number 10. But just going back to Frazier, though, he was the master of actually the close fight, of getting in your opponent's face and restricting their maneuverability, which he did very well against Ali in the 3 fights that he fought against him. So Number 10 is George Foreman. Number 10 is George Foreman. Foreman is, until his loss to Ali in the Rumble of the Jungle in 1974, Foreman was the most dominating fighter. Nobody looked as though they could defeat him. His punching ability was second to none. And until Ali actually outboxed him in Zambia, in Zaire, it didn't look as though anybody could get close to this fighter. He beat Frazier twice, he beat Norton twice, and then made a comeback in the 90s where he knocked out Michael Moore. And very much a gentle soul in his second portion of his life, although intimidating beyond anything in the first portion of his life. Foreman was a character. It was Foreman, Frazier, and Ali who really livened up the sport and gave it a wonderful energy. So that would be George Foreman, who I'm going to rank at number 10. Number 9, I'm going to go with the classically trained, wonderful textbook type fighter, Gene Tunney, a 1920s fighter who beat Jack Dempsey, I believe, twice, and outboxed him. Now, one could argue, why isn't Tunney ranked higher? And that's perhaps because he wasn't as intimidating and wasn't as spectacular as some of the fighters ahead of him. He boxed, he was methodical, and he boxed to win against his opponent. So he would look at his opponent's weaknesses and box around that. And that's what he actually did. So perhaps if he'd been more flamboyant, then he would have actually been ranked a bit higher on the list. But anyway, I think a 9th position for Gene Tunney is quite good. 8th is Mike Tyson. And if it wasn't for Mike's inner demons and his shenanigans off the rink and his jail time and all of that, would probably have gone into the top 5. Tyson, prior to his jail time, would have been a top 5 fighter. He was in a league of his own. The advice he got from Castamaro, his trainer, was first rate, and he was almost, together with perhaps Sonny Liston and later Jack Dempsey, was arguably or the most intimidating fighter of his generation, or boxing altogether. So that would have been Mike Tyson. Number 7 is Larry Holmes. Now, Larry Holmes was the best fighter when I was a teenager. He dominated boxing. He probably would have surpassed or maybe equaled Rocky Marciano's undefeated record, if not for that surprise loss against Michael Spinks. Was clearly the best fighter in the heavyweight post Ali, and the immediate era post Ali. He defeated Ali, although Ali was somewhat over the hill at the time. And when I was growing up in South Africa, he was the milestone that you wanted to fight against. I cheered for guys like Gerrie Coetzee and Kali Kanutsa, but I knew they were, as much as I liked them, they were not capable of beating Larry Holmes, who was the father of the effective jab and was a world-class fighter. in his own right. So I'd put Larry at 7. I put Lennox Lewis at number 6. Lewis was probably the number 1 of the super great. It was the last, not number 1, was probably the last of the super great fighters. If he trained and worked, he was almost impossible to defeat. He had height, he had reach, he had strength, he could jab, he could move, he was aggressive, he was intimidating, he had all of that going for him, and is certainly the best non-American fighter of all time. Number 5 is the bar fighter himself, the man who actually probably took boxing onto a new level, could storm into the ring and could just overpower you, so in the way that Mike Tyson could. And that was, of course, this man, of course, is Jack Dempsey, one of the legends of boxing, and a man who certainly livened up the sport in the 20s, giving it a much needed energy that it had to have during that era. Number 4 is Sonny Liston. Now, Sonny Liston is a tragic character. He's a tragic character in that he could have actually achieved even more than he did. He was certainly the best fighter from the going from the very, very late 50s all the way into the 60s. He lost twice to Cassius Clay, who then became Muhammad Ali. Some people say the reason was that he was injured at the time. One of those was the Phantom Punch fight, of which there's been a great deal of literature on that particular topic. Sonny Liston was the fighter who nobody wanted to fight. He was the most dodged fighter of all time, and you really had to work overtime to beat him. And generally speaking, he could dominate and just beat any fighter at the time if they didn't know what they were doing, to an absolute pulp. So, I mean, Henry Cooper, the famous British fighter, his trainer, even mentioned years later about that he did not want to have a fight against Sonny Liston. He was the one fighter. He'd rather fight Cassius Clay than have to deal with Sonny Liston. Again, he struggled off the ring, and this kind of hurt him. But I would put Sonny Liston at number 4. Number 3 was the extremely disciplined Rocky Marciano, who won over 80% of his fights with knockouts and never lost a single fight, and had a solid punch. Now, Marciano himself didn't look as though he should be such a dominant fighter. He wasn't a big man at all. He had hardly any reach and was forced to box very close to his opponent. But he trained like crazy. In fact, he actually used a above regulation size boxing bag to work on his skills. And it was his work ethic and the fact that he never underestimated his opponent that led to his success. Unfortunately, he died prematurely in a plane accident, but he had some renowned fights against people such as Jersey Joe Walcott. He defeated Joe Louis, although Joe Louis was a bit beyond his best at the time, and he also defeated Archie Moore. The number 2 in my list goes to Joe Louis. Now, Joe Louis is one of my favorite fighters. I think he took boxing, if Dempsey took boxing into the 20s and brought it up to that level, and Jack Johnson apparently did so prior to that, then I would say that Joe Louis laid the foundations for the boxing of the 30s, 40s, and 50s and was the precursor to Ali. He was very, very skillful, a great pound-for-pound fighter, had all the weapons in his artillery. Some people accused him of dodging some of the black fighters, but that's somewhat up for debate. But the fact that he held the world title for so many years, including being champion of during World War II, is a feat that should be well rewarded. The sad truth about Joe Louis is that he surrounded himself with a number of people who weren't looking after his best interests, and this actually eventually affected him financially and caused a bit of hardship in the later part of his life. So Joe Louis comes in at number 2. And number 1, you could probably guess who this is going to be for number 1. There is only one person who can fill this accolade, and that's Cassius Clay. Later, Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer of all time. Now, why was Muhammad Ali the greatest boxer of all time? Because he simply beat the best. He beat Joe Frazier twice. He beat Ken Norton twice. He beat Sonny Liston twice. He fought Cleveland Williams. He fought Ron Lyle. He beat Bugner twice, Cooper twice. There was no one that he dodged. He fought everyone that you could think of who was worth fighting. He fought the best, he beat the best, and he was the best. And even if you go beyond his victories in the ring, what he added to the sport by bringing it into, by giving the sport the acclaim that he did, by elevating it to a status that it had never seen before, and his on-rink and his off-rink personality, he added so much to the history of to American history, but also to sporting history. He was perhaps one of the not only the greatest boxer, but perhaps one of the greatest athletes of all time. So this would be my top 20 list of greatest heavyweights. Let me know what you think, whether you agree with this list or not, and list your comments down below, and we can get back to you. Thank you very much. Bye.